Do you foresee any income tax relief for the middle class in the upcoming budget?
Well, I think there is some ground at the lower slabs because, with inflation, the real value of tax goes up. So the equivalent slab should begin somewhat higher. Some ground for a reduction there. Yeah.
All right. Now, besides tax rates, the next most important thing that all viewers are concerned about is inflation. And rising inflation is one of the primary concerns. So what do you think the government can do or bring about in this budget to ease that concern?
Yeah, I think that they had highlighted a very, very good policy initiative last time, this coordination with the states. And they should further that. I am seeing, because in the MPC, repeatedly we saw food, vegetable price inflation spikes, So those are really because of poor supply chains. And this is a state level issue. In such a diverse country like India, we should, like, for example, Delhi used to get tomatoes only from Himachal. So Himachal floods means prices really shot up to 600% and so on. This kind of thing should not happen if you have a diversified supply chain. So, and I'm happy to see that a lot of states, there is movement on this. A lot of, I think more than 4 states have allowed private markets and sales at farm gates. But there are still restrictions on private players and infrastructure of cold storages and so on. So, there has to be coordination with the center and states on this. That's a longer term solution to these inflation spikes. Because as we are seeing income rise in the lower slabs, a lot of the transfers that are made are also going to those categories. And there the demand for vegetables is really going to rise. So we need to ensure that the supply chains are robust and well diversified.
Dr. Goyal, when it comes to boosting India's growth rate, what kind of policy intervention would you like to see?
Well, interesting, when I was looking at the data carefully, everybody's saying the government did not spend enough. But if you look at the disaggregated components, and the shortfall has really been in capital investment. Although capital is not a very large share of government expenditure, but they have doubled the share over the last few years. While revenue expenditure was slightly exceeded. So the slowdown is really due to this, the slowdown in growth is due to a shortfall in capex. And I've been saying that the quality of government expenditure matters. Although there might be overall fiscal consolidation, deficits are coming down as they should. But if the share of government spending, which goes towards more productive kind of areas which increase productivity, which reduce bottlenecks in the economy, then it has a very sort of a much larger growth multiplier. So I think that's one of the main things the government can do. And also we found that states are going in for a lot of these transfer schemes, but the conditional loans given that the government gave, the net, even state capital expenditure has increased by about 50 bps, while central share of capex has doubled. So I think incentives, that's what just making resources available doesn't seem to deliver the goods. You need to induce people to move in the right direction.
And what measures do you think the budget should include to also address India's jobs challenge?
Yes, I think there is research that shows, our government is understaffed. And the reason there are long queues for government employment is that at the lower levels, they pay too much in government jobs, and there's too much security and so on, right? So they need to increase staffing, but it should be on a contract basis. And that's one way of increasing jobs, productive jobs. And then, of course, these kind of incentives to corporates to employ more. But I think that more than giving people money to do things, as I said, these kind of resources don't work so much. It is that I find that over the last few years, when growth was steady, post-pandemic, the data is showing that job creation has increased, even corporate job creation. It's not really that noticeable at present because it's the beginning of a trend. So I think that the big thing the government can do with macroeconomic policy, this is a major objective of macroeconomic policy, smooth shocks. Our growth rate has been very volatile after the reforms. But over the last 3 years, we grew steadily at a high rate. And I think for that, maintaining real interest rates around UT is very important. And for the MPC to be able to do that, you need supply-side action that reduces the kind of inflationary shocks we get on the supply side. And if you smooth growth, and corporates can see steady high growth, they are going to invest, they're going to hire people, because they need people to deliver the goods that are in demand.
Right. Also, another thing that we're looking at is about India's commitment to sustainability and green economy, especially in terms of incentives for renewable energy, green infrastructure, and electric vehicles. What do you think you would like to see in the budget?
Yeah, so the typical thing is tax incentives. They also need to take steps to develop carbon markets, which will induce industry to shift to green technology. They can earn carbon credits. It should be the beginning of trade in emissions and so on. So, and also to increase, because there's a lot of global money and we need to build platforms. We have a lot of innovations in the payment space, as well as digital public infrastructure. So a platform that keeps, because we have a lot of depth in the economy and foreign lenders don't know what's happening in states at third tier. So if there are platforms that can, keep this, and somebody that can certify and maintain and develop standards, then you can have a very fast movement of low-cost funds because the risk perception decreases. And I think we have NABFID and other development large banks who can help in these kind of building such platforms and keeping a list of ready projects with uniform standards. That kind of thing would help a lot.
Right. Dr. Goyal, we are living in the Trump era, and amid potential geopolitical risks and global slowdown, what do you think that the government needs to do in this budget to insulate the Indian economy from any potential external shock?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying is the lesson we learned over the last 3 years. Because typically what used to happen is that, and even today people will say that geopolitics and everything's vulnerable, we need to be careful, we need to tighten. That is exactly the wrong thing. Because if there is an external demand shock or external problems, then we need to develop our own markets. India, our advantage is a lot of diversity. For example, during the pandemic and when industry had slowed down, there was the lockdown, etc. Agriculture did well. At that time, there were large exports from agriculture. And of course, services. We see we're trying to develop manufacturing, and there has been some positive developments there, but services and global capability centers. So for all this, it is really important that domestic demand is sustained, that if there is an external shock, countermeasures are taken to keep domestic industry going. Yeah.